It was the summer of 1978. Inside the Columbus County, North Carolina courthouse, the smug FBI agent sitting in the witness stand explained, a bit condescendingly, that the Bureau, the most advanced law enforcement outfit in the world, used the most sophisticated forensic techniques available anywhere. When it came to analyzing hair and determining if a hair found at a crime scene matched the hair of a suspect, he said, FBI scientists used a 16-point matching system. In this particular case, the agent continued, the hair found at the crime scene and the hair taken from the suspect, Joseph Sledge, matched in all 16 points of comparison. It was a perfect match. The matching hair was the only physical evidence that placed the suspect at the crime scene, the Elizabethtown, North Carolina home of 74-year-old Josephine Davis and her 57-year-old daughter, Eileen Davis, where both women had been brutally beaten and stabbed to death. The hair, along with the testimony of two witnesses who claimed that Sledge had told them he had killed both women, was enough for the jury to convict Sledge of double murder. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of life in prison. Let's back up a few years to 1973. Joseph Sledge had been drafted by the Army and drove a supply truck at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. After leaving the Army, he found work as a janitor, but was soon laid off. Broke and hungry, Sledge stole a box of clothing from a department store. He was caught, arrested, and sentenced to 4 years in a minimum security prison, the nearby White Lake prison camp. One day, around 3 years later, 1976, Sledge was picking up highway litter as part of a work crew. Another inmate on the crew, a convicted murderer, picked a fight with Sledge and hit him so hard that he cracked Sledge's skull. As a consequence, the other inmate was transferred to a harsher prison for 6 months. He blamed Sledge for his punishment. When the other inmate returned to White Lake in September of 1976, Sledge was convinced he would exact revenge and feared for his life. So even though he had less than a year left in his sentence, Sledge felt he would be safer outside on the run than inside the prison. On the evening of September 5th, 1976, Joseph Sledge climbed over a fence at White Lake and hid in the nearby woods, waiting for the cover of darkness. Within hours, less than 5 miles away, someone savagely beat and stabbed Josephine and Eileen Davis to death. Sledge was an obvious suspect. He was a known criminal with opportunity. The authorities captured him 4 days later, but could not charge him with the murders since no physical evidence linked him to the crime. Sledge was placed back in prison to continue to serve his robbery sentence, with more time added for the escape. A year later, the crime remained unsolved. There had been other, also unsolved, murders in the area. The residents of Bladen County feared for their safety and had lost confidence in the authorities. They began to form armed groups to patrol the region, taking the law into their own hands. The situation had become untenable. The only suspect the authorities had come up with was Joseph Sledge. So law enforcement and prison officials began to interview inmates who had come into contact with Sledge. Suddenly, in February of 1978, Sledge was indicted for the murders of Josephine and Eileen Davis, based primarily on the statements of Herman Baker and Donnie Sutton, 2 prison inmates who said that Sledge had admitted to them that he had beaten and killed the Davis women. A young, ambitious prosecutor named Michael Easley handled the case for the state. Easley would go on to become district attorney, state attorney general, and North Carolina's governor in 2001. I told you he was ambitious. Incidentally, in 2013, Easley became the first governor of North Carolina to be convicted of a felony. But that's a story for another time. Back to Joseph Sledge's trial in 1978. Prosecutor Easley produced the FBI hair analyst, as well as the 2 jailhouse snitches, Baker and Sutton. We know the rest. Sledge was convicted to 2 consecutive life terms. Sledge maintained his innocence, and over the next 2 decades filed more than 25 post-conviction motions, all on his own, without the assistance of an attorney. All of Sledge's motions were denied. In 2004, attorney Christine Mumma, executive director of the North Carolina Center on Actual Innocence, became involved in the case and obtained court orders for the physical evidence to be sent to the lab for modern testing. The critical hair evidence had been lost, however. The hair was finally found in August of 2012. In December of 2012, DNA tests were performed on the hair. The hair found at the scene did not, repeat, did not match the hair sample provided by Sledge. In the spring of 2013, Herman Baker, one of the jailhouse snitches, recanted his testimony. He said the police had fed him the details of the crime to give him credibility and awarded him early parole and $3,000 in reward money for his testimony. Donnie Sutton, the other snitch, was dead by then, but he had also received early parole and had been paid $2,000 for his testimony. At the time of the trial, both men had testified that they were not compensated for their statements. On January 23, 2015, a 3-judge panel of Superior Court judges declared Sledge factually innocent. He was released after spending 37 years in prison for the murders. The emergence of DNA testing has revealed that the techniques the FBI used previously were basically junk science that focused on comparing certain characteristics of hair samples to determine their similarity, without taking into account how likely it was that other people's hair would share those characteristics. Thousands of people were convicted based on FBI forensic testimony that was, according to a statistically sizable sample of cases reviewed by the FBI itself, wrong 95% of the time. Joseph Sledge was awarded $750,000 in compensation from the state of North Carolina. He settled his lawsuit with the Bladen County Sheriff's Office for $4 million. He settled with the State Bureau of Investigation for $900,000 and with the Columbus County Clerk of Court for $2 million. Sledge also received an apology from Bladen County District Attorney John David, who obviously had nothing to do with the original trial in the 70s. David told Sledge, "There's nothing worse for a prosecutor than convicting an innocent person." In an interview following his release from prison in 2015, Joseph Sledge was asked, "What can the state of North Carolina do to make this right?" "Give me 40 years, Sledge replied. "Give you 40 years?" the interviewer asked. "Yeah, of my life. That'd be great. I could use that. But they cannot give me 40 years of my life back to me. They can't do it. It's impossible." In December of 2020, just 5 years after his release from prison, Joseph Sledge died at age 79. I'm Jack Azout. Thank you for watching.